Potentia Wealth brings you the Power of Wealthness Podcast.
This is the Power of Wealthness Podcast.
Cactus 15.9, turn left lane 270.
This is Cactus 1539. Hit birds to lost thrust and voltage. Returning back towards LaGuardia.
Okay, you need to return to LaGuardia. Turn left heading up 220.
220.
Tower, stop your departures. Got emergency returning. It's 1529. He bird strike. He lost all engine. He lost the thrust in the engines. He's returning immediately.
Cactus 1529. Which engines?
He lost thrust in both engines, he said.
Got it.
Cactus 1529. We can get it for you. Do you want to try to land 1013?
We're unable. We may end up in the Hudson.
Today's guest is Joe Hart, not only a longtime friend, professional investor, and executive at many of the best financial firms around the country, but he's also a survivor of the Miracle on the Hudson flight. Joe, thanks for joining us today.
How are you, Todd? First, let me just start by thanking you and Kevin and the rest of the team for allowing me to participate in this podcast. It's truly an honor to be considered by a firm like Potentia Wealth to come on, share some thoughts and insights, not only about investing, but decision-making is really what I like to talk about. Or a different way to put it, understanding that our experiences, like the plane crash, ultimately impact how we process information and ultimately render decisions or expected outcomes. I know your tagline, life and money, they always find a way to intersect. And the decisions we make are deeply affected by that intersection. Now, as you said, although I've got over 37 years experience in the investment industry, I'm not here to advocate or solicit any specific advice or investments or anything about the markets or portfolios. I leave the execution and guidance on those things to experts like you and Kevin. I do, however, have a very deep and long-standing passion for sharing the things I've learned and experienced about decision-making, money, the brain. I've been a student of behavioral finance since about 2000. It goes all the way back to the tech bubble. But my experience 17 years ago really kind of brought it all to a head and made it very, very personal, not just academic. So again, thanks for having me on the show.
It's a pleasure, and we look forward to sharing your story from 17 years ago and then getting more into the behavioral finance piece, which we are always working with here at Potentia and our clients.
I've heard that story now a few times over the time that we've known each other. And do me a favor, take us back to that time and what was going through your mind? I mean, what always captures from that opening scene of talking to the tower is, we're not going to make it. We're going to go into the Hudson. And I assume that Sully Sullenberger came over the loudspeaker and warned you all. What happened with the decision-making there?
I'm truly impressed that you still want to hear about it, because for 17 of the 20 years we've known each other, that's all I talk about. I was really, really fortunate that I was getting to go home in time to see my kid play. So that was kind of the exciting part. So again, it's normal. They call the boarding process. We get in line. We all start to get on the plane. I'm with 149 other people. And I would believe that all of those people, all 149 others, had essentially the same expected outcome that I was anticipating of that flight. And what I mean by that was we'd complete the boarding process, we'd taxi to a runway, we'd take off, and eventually land in Charlotte somewhere around the promised or estimated time. And I think anybody listening to your program today would probably have a similar expected outcome in that situation. So now what happened? We taxi out, the plane revs up, we lift off, we're in the climb, about 90 seconds into the climb out, somewhere around 2,700 feet. All of a sudden, we heard we being the passengers, heard a series of loud thuds in the aircraft. Then a small waft of smoke and foul smell, burning oil, started to come through the cabin. And all you could hear was the clack, clack, clacking sound of the engines, what turned out to be disintegrating. Let's just say, well, it was a little unsettling. How's that for a descriptive word? But at the end of the day, I mean, I'm listening to this, and I'm a frequent traveler, and I'm seasoned in the air, and so I just kind of think everything is going to be A-okay. It was very quiet in the cabin. Everybody was trying to discern what was going on and what the outcome might be. Then, about 163 seconds later, we heard 3 words from the cockpit, and they were the most unemotional words I've ever heard anybody speak. Sully came on and said, "Brace for impact." 45 seconds later, I was being thrown around in my seat, watching water splash over the top of the plane through my window. I think the key takeaway from all this that I learned is anything can change in a moment. And that's kind of the experience up to that point.
When that plane experienced the bird strikes, and that's what it was. For anybody who's seen Top Gun Maverick, they've seen that a single bird can take out $1 billion airplane. But you lost both engines in that plane during that strike. And so getting back to the airport, as we heard from the air traffic controller, was impossible. And he said, "I'm going down into the Hudson." What's going through your mind at that time?
Come on, Kevin. You can't be serious. Am I allowed to curse on the podcast? I'll fast forward 10 days in an interview, after an interview with Katie Couric. She did ask me the question, "Did you poop your pants?" Although she used a much more succinct word. And I had to laugh. I said, "Well, I don't think I did that, but I think I'm still picking pieces out of it." If you know what I'm saying. So, what's going through your mind? The truth of the matter is, initially thinking it through, you don't know what's going on. You don't know how to react to it. To go back to what you said about the engines, and this kind of is what the movie ends up being about. The right engine flamed out immediately. So it took at least two full-size geese through the right engine if you're facing the forward front of the plane. So DNA was detected from at least 2 geese. On the left-hand engine, 1 goose went through it, at least based on the DNA testing. So what does that mean? The right engine had flamed out. It was inoperable. It actually seized, fell apart. The left-hand engine, which I was sitting next to, believe it or not, continued to whirl. It continued to run. And what happened was, as the goose went through it, it created what I refer to as a corncob effect. So it sheared off some of the propellers inside the turbine of the engine, but not all of them, and didn't seize up the engine like it did on the right side. So, little misleading, I actually thought, we got 1 engine, we're going to make it back, everything's going to be okay. Not realizing it had been corncobbed, and that corncob effect essentially took away all thrust. And not to be technical or condescending in my conversation, but jet aircraft are not meant to glide. They're meant to have thrust, power. When they lose thrust, they lose lift, and they literally will stop in the air and drop. It's called a flat spin because of the contour of the wings. So one of the great things about Sully being our pilot, he was also a glider pilot, well-trained. He had realized he had lost all thrust, even though the engine and the gauges said the left engine was still operating. As a result of that, he knew 2 things were going to happen. That engine was eventually going to stop, and when it did, he would lose all electricity, or all generation of electricity, which is required to run the aircraft, especially the hydraulic system. So again, getting ahead and talking about the movie, Sully's first move was to violate the quick restart manual guidance, and he turned on the APU, which is short for auxiliary power unit. And that's essentially an air dam in the back of the plane that forces air as you're traveling into a turbine-type generator that gives you just enough electricity to keep all the gauges and hydraulics working. And believe it or not, had he not had that somewhat training and sixth sense about losing thrust, he wouldn't have made the decisions he made. He would have followed the manual, and the outcome would have been significantly less positive.
I'm going to lighten the mood a little bit, Joe. Is that why Tom Hanks played Sully and not you?
They wanted Brad Pitt to play me, but I said he wasn't handsome enough, so no, they passed.
No, I always appreciate you going through that because it is so important to talk about it. And it's such a rare experience to be able to, 150 people where that's it. And to be able to have you share that is so immense. I want to move us forward just a little bit because one of the famous pictures you show, and we're going to have it up there for those that look at the video, is you actually standing on the wing as the plane is floating in the water. And it's there is where I start to think that now you're out of the immediate danger, but there's absolutely freezing cold water in the Hudson this time of year. So hypothermia is a possibility. There's all these challenges. Tell me what you were going through at that point. When did decision-making come in? What type of thought process was happening as you're waiting to theoretically be rescued at that point? Yeah,
good stuff. So the plane's pretty quiet while we're going through the experience. You could hear some murmuring, some people, saying prayers. A couple people were pulling out their phones, trying to call loved ones and stuff like that. But it all happened pretty fast. So on the way down, I learned the 5 stages of grief. I experienced them firsthand. Now I know them inside out. I know how they work. At first, I was in the denial phase. This isn't going to happen. This is just crazy crap. We're going to get to Charlotte. No big deal. And the fun thing is they don't go in sequence. You kind of bounce around through them, but I go through denial. It's not going to happen. Then I get mad, like crap. I'm going to be late for my son's basketball game now. The whole reason I left the office was to get home. And now this crap's happening, blah, blah, blah. So I'm getting a little angry and I'm bouncing around on that and the inconvenience that it's going to cause. And I share this with you because it's very, very important to understand that none of these thoughts are really rational or logical. It's just how our brain works. That's what we default to. So I'm bouncing in and out of those. And then I got into the bargaining phase of grief, which is, I could share with you some of the promises I was trying to make, just get me through this. I won't curse anymore. I'll go to church every Sunday. I'll donate to the poor. I'll be nice to people, all that stuff.
Yeah, the universe knew you weren't being honest with yourself, so that didn't work.
Yeah, so that's the next phase, right? So as the water's starting to, come up from under the plane, you can start to see it. I kind of started to think about, truly, I started to think about, is there a way for me to get to the door, pop it open, and jump just before the plane hits the water? And my rationalization to that thought was, at least I'm doing something. If I'm going to die, I'm going to die on my terms. I don't want to be in a plane that hits the water, breaks into 20 pieces, and I drown. I guess doing something's better than nothing. So, that's a weird thought to have. But then depression set in, the next phase. And the depression was somewhat interesting in the sense that all I started thinking about was what I thought was most important in life, which I didn't think about regularly. And as an example, I started thinking about my kids. Will they be okay? Have I planned for them properly? Is my will in order? Did I make the life insurance payment that month? And then I got more depressed thinking, boy, the one thing I'm going to miss the most in dying is the fact that I'm not going to be around to see my kids grow up. That was probably the mother load that I went through. And so I'm bouncing around in all those kind of grief situations. And then finally I got to the last one, and the last one is acceptance. And yes, I got to the point in the aircraft where I accepted I was going to pass. And it was very interesting because it was as if the weight had been lifted off my shoulders, that I'd done everything I'd done. I could have done it much better. I wished I had, but it's now out of my hands, and it's just going to be what it's going to be, and I'm going to hope. So we hit the water. I survive. I'm shocked. I jump up. I run out onto the wing. Matter of fact, as I climbed out the window, a lot of the people ahead of me, because I went out the window, jumped in the water and started swimming. Well, the funny thing is, as I was going down, right before we hit the water, I thought to myself, I might need to call my kids if I survive. So I reached in my seat back pocket and I pulled my 2 phones out and slipped them into my pants pockets. So I got out on the wing, and what you're looking at is me making phone calls. I called my kids. I called my boss, told him I was going to miss our conference call that night.
It was a little unavoidable.
So I called and said, I'm not going to make the call. And then I started calling my kids. And then while I'm standing there, and the interesting thing is people really started to get panicked on the wing. So as you said, it looked like we're mostly out of harm's way, where there's still some potential danger, but that's when most of the people started to have emotional breakdowns and yell and scream. Well, I'm trying to make phone calls. And one of my calls was actually to U.S. Airways and asked them to find me a flight home later that night. And that phone call was absolutely hilarious. I'm not going to bore your audience with all of it, but
I wish you had a recording of that.
that was it. I started thinking, how do I get home? I started thinking about why was I making the decisions I was making? I mean, why did I call U.S. Air? I mean, that's so illogical. I to this day, I still struggle with it. But I think when you break it down, all of those moments are now embedded in my mind and process information in different ways. So
this is the same type of thing that our clients go through when you have a market correction, or in this case, sometimes the market crash. They go through the same process that you just went through. And when you're talking about, I should get up and open the door, at least I'm doing something, it's when a lot of our clients really start to pay attention to the investments in their accounts, and they start wanting to control it, and they have calling us and having more conversations and getting more involved. And sometimes that's just the wrong thing to do. I mean, had you opened that door beforehand, it could have been a different outcome than what you had landing in the water.
Absolutely. And to your point, yeah. So I like to talk about this in because again, I've been studying. I'm what they call a self-proclaimed expert, and I didn't make that. It's if you read 10,000 hours or more on a single subject, you're considered a self-proclaimed expert. So I'll let you guys interpret that. But I've read well over 10,000 hours of behavioral finance and the brain things. I've attended classes and formal training on behavioral issues. And so the first thing I think that's important to understand, both for you as an advisor, but more importantly for your clients, those that believe and trust that there's a future for them, we need to understand that the human mind is the single most powerful muscle in the human body. It is so powerful, it's frightening. And yes, I use the word muscle purposefully because we know that we can train it and we can make it stronger. But because it is so powerful, it's also one of the laziest muscles in the human body. And let me clarify that for a minute. It is so strong, it uses so much energy. Think about it as constantly uploading data. It never takes a break, not even when you're asleep. It just slows down. And it's taking in data from multiple sources: sight, sound, taste, touch, smell. And it processes, believe it or not, in less than 1/64th of a second. You make a decision on the data that your brain takes in, on average, in less than 1/64th of a second.
That's fast.
That's pretty quick. So what does it do? it looks for shortcuts. It says, okay, here's the data that just came in. I've seen this before, kinda. This is what happened the last time, so I'm going to assign that same expected outcome to this set of data until such time as I'm proved wrong and I have to redo it. So that information goes through a part of the brain on top of the basal cortex called the amygdala. They're two little almond-shaped pieces of the brain, and they are also emotion central. So now let's just break this down to brass tacks. What the brain is doing is saying, I am relying on my fight or flight impulse in the initial interpretation of data. I'm going to do that in 1/64th of a second, and I am going to make an emotional response. Should I stay and fight, or should I run for the hills? So when you see a hiccup in the market, it's scary, especially if your financial future is tied to it. And again, I don't want to get too weird on this, but whether we admit it or not, we all have an emotional tie to money. It's food, it's water, it's utilities, it's education. We all have it, some more than others. But if you have any level of emotional attachment to money, which we all do, then you need to understand that the market is going to impact how you think. So I think it's important to understand that, and that's how the brain. So once it goes through that emotional piece, then you have the option. It actually gets pushed out into another part of the brain, and ultimately, if it's a big enough decision, to the prefrontal cortex where you can evaluate it. And a lot of times, if you think about one of your reactions, you can and step and say, let me think this through for a second. You can actually feel it move from one part of your brain to the next to be more rationally assessed in the process.
So, Joe, just because you spent so much time focused on the research here, and you've lectured also, you left that out of your bio, that you've traveled the country talking about this exact piece to so many people, and that's why it's been so helpful. But psychologically, what is actually happening in the investor's brain when these sharp markets come to it, and how do they overcome that urge to flight? Because that's what it is, right? You're saying markets sell off.
Or to fight.
Exactly. So what's happening from that standpoint, from the research you've done?
So there's a handful of ways to do this. To answer that, the short answer is have a plan and have somebody not close to that plan. And when I say not close, not emotionally tied to that plan, there for you. So I do it. Listen, studies have been done. It's crazy things. And what's hilarious about it is I'm trained in it. I understand it. I think I get it. And yet every morning, do you know what I do?
Check the market.
I get up and check my account balances. I don't need the money today. Why am I watching it? But it's just what I do, and I shouldn't. And by the way, we also need to understand that the more often we look at that type of data, the less likely we are to be invested or to invest properly. And here's what I could give you the statistics if you wanted. I have slides that do this when I do the lecture. But if an investor sees performance on a monthly basis, they are significantly less likely to have the proper asset allocation based on their long-term investment objective than somebody who only looks at the data annually. And that makes a big difference in performance over the long haul. So that's the first thing I would say. Have a plan. Trust the plan. The plan can be changed. The plan can be adjusted. It can be modified. But don't throw your hands up in the air and say, let's do this now because you're in a panic. Matter of fact, it's the only aspect of what we do as human beings where we're not looking for bargains. It's Christmas time. All I'm looking for right now are sale signs. I want to buy that gift for my child at 50% less than the price it's offered at. But the market goes down 50%. My gut reaction is, oh, I got to get out. I shouldn't have used 50%, but you know what I'm saying. I should be loading up because anything that I own, let's just say I bought it at $5 a share. I did my homework. I understand it. I believe in it. All the reasons I bought it, unless something fundamentally changed, should be worth a lot more to me if it's $2 a share. So, but when it goes down to 2, I don't want to buy it. 5, I'll buy a extra. So it's, and we can document that on how the flows of investor assets go in and out of the market based on performance and volatility. Volatility is really just an outward example of emotions in the market, white noise driving people's emotion. That's one more thing. I'm sorry, I'm just running off on tangents. Think about it from this perspective. It's really not what you watch. Do you watch the market or do you see the market? I found this interesting one night. I was in my hotel room watching the TV, and I turned on the money channel. I won't tell you which one. But at one time, there were 4 different people speaking at the same time, all screaming about how bad the market performed that day. And it was one of those days, now it goes back a couple years, but it was one of those days where it wasn't that bad. But bad news sells, and they like to say the bad things. Notice this. The market never goes up and down. It plummets and soars. It set new records, or it plummeted from its heights. It's designed to scare you and activate that fight or flight syndrome. So
you raised up a very important piece, and I do that too. The financial media, I always joke, has 3 crises a day. Right when I wake up first thing in the morning, something went wrong in Europe, or there's something to focus on, or the market hasn't opened yet. Right around lunchtime here in California, we run into this, another crisis that's popping up, and then at the end of the day, something didn't pan out right. And we've had consistently good markets for a long period of time, and we're still hearing that news. What I'm trying to do, Joe, and I'd love to hear your piece on it, is when markets get stressed, what are the pieces that our listeners should look out for that are innate in our initial reaction, but that aren't the most logical?
Okay, that's a good question. And it's deep.
I think you stumped him, Todd.
That's a great question. Not good, great.
He didn't stump me. He's not that smart. So let me start with an example. I remember precisely. So, okay, the plane crash, that's 17 years ago. I can literally tell you what happened second by second with me and some others around me from the time the wheels went up to the time I was a little drunk by the time I got home. So how about say when I boarded the plane to go home later that night? I also remember the single worst stock market in history. Single day in the history of our markets. October 19th, 1987. I know where I was, who I was with, what I was doing, and how I reacted to it. So to your point, when the market gets wobbly, who would have thought on October 19th, 1987, when the market closed at 1723, that today we'd be bumping up against 50,000? My question, was October 19th, 1987, a good day to buy or a good day to do what most people did and was sell?
It's a buy day.
I wish I had tripled down on that day. I wouldn't need to do this. I wouldn't need to study. I'd be down the Bahamas every day, gambling and drinking pina coladas. So it's kind of the first thing you got to do is check yourself. What's the source? Why are they telling me what they're telling me the way they're telling it? Because there are biases, right? As the brain processes information and makes those shortcuts, they're called heuristics, rules of thumbs. They're basically mental shortcuts on processing information. It creates these heuristics, and framing how something is framed materially impacts our decision making, how it's positioned, which is framing, how readily available other information is. So when the market goes down now 5%, do I freak out? No. I go back and say, oh my gosh, this is the same thing I saw on October 1987. Maybe I should investigate. Is it an opportunity for me to put more money in it? Is this a real deal where it's going to continue to go down? Or should I just stand pat and let it bounce back tomorrow? Which, by the way, of late, it seems to be doing a lot of that. So
A lot of it, yes.
those are the things I think you got to have. And the reason I'm so in favor, well, there's a lot of reasons I'm in favor of what you do for a living, is you are there to protect us from ourselves. That's what you do. By building plans and coaching and holding hands and emotionally guiding us to make better decisions when, as human beings, we're not inclined to make good decisions. Does that answer your question?
It does, absolutely. In fact, I was going to turn to Kevin. We talk about this all the time about walking the journey together. You've done this for a long time as well. How have you seen that piece evolve from just, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, stock picking and brokers versus financial coaches and where we are today. So what have you seen and how's that changed for you?
Significantly. And I think that the market has changed significantly because years ago, it was a transaction-based business. It was making sure that whatever I was selling you was right on that day, but not in the future. Today, we play more of a fiduciary capacity where it's longer term, and we're really looking at what's right for our clients, not only today and tomorrow, but in 5 years, 10 years from now, and in that advisory capacity, always making changes. The risk that people experience or the feelings that they experience in volatile markets are managed by setting expectations. And it's one of the reasons today that we go through the financial planning process, that we go through a risk analysis, that we really understand where our clients are, because each one of them experiences that volatility differently. And so understanding from a financial planning place where our clients need to be and how much risk they need to take to have a high probability of achieving their financial goals, and then understanding personally how much volatility they can experience without hitting that fight or flight place where they're going to sell everything is really important to help them so that we can back them off the cliff, that we can help them understand the situation that's going on, and that we can manage their portfolios that are custom built for them to help them achieve those goals and do it in a way that's not going to trigger that fight or flight if we go through a major market correction. So what we do today is a lot more technical, a lot more complicated than what we used to do in the past.
Totally agree. The other piece I'd add to it, and Joe, you can attest to this as well, we also moved to the multifamily office structure. So now it's not just about, and going back to 1987, there was always that famous quote, stockbrokers, it was get a hunch, buy a bunch. Now it's so much more diversified across what we're trying to accomplish, bringing in the tax expertise and the estate planning expertise. Joe, I think it's to your point, that way you're not so resilient on the popular, finance media at this point to see what's happening, because it's more in context of your family unit and what is important. And you highlighted that even when you were on the plane. Going back to that, that's what really caught my attention. You went through all those 5 factors in 163 seconds, I think is what you said, the entire time from when the bird strike until touchdown. You went through all 5 of those, oscillated back and forth, and it's exactly what we focus on or what we experience in much less stressful, albeit similar situations. So it's just fascinating.
So there's a couple of things, if you let me jump in for a second, there's a couple of things there, right? So what was going through my mind is, in hindsight, is I came to the conclusion that I wasted far too much time worrying about things that didn't matter to the people that mattered to me. So the people that mattered to me were my 4 children, and I don't make that mistake anymore. I'm on top of that. The second one is we just talked about market volatility. And when we talk about that, or market hiccups, we talk about, typically we focus on the decline. But the brain is, again, powerful and complex. The opposite plays out as well. My kids call it FOMO. It's more than FOMO. It's more than fear of missing out. A few years back, I can't remember precisely when, was the last time I looked at it. The study may have been ongoing, but they basically did a study of parts of the brain and what happens under exuberance and fear. What parts of the brain are activated, most stimulated. And so they create this functional MRI, basically a X-ray of the brain, electrical X-ray. And they get their baseline. So you see yours or me laying on a bed, and they're doing the thing, and we see the parts of the brain almost at rest. And then they brought in a drug addict. And they hooked the drug addict up, and they laid him down on the table and said, all right, we want to watch how your brain activates under certain circumstances. As a reward for participating in our study, when we're done, we're going to give you a couple hits of cocaine. They learned a lot about what part of the brain became activated. Now, keep in mind, they never gave them that, which created a whole different thing after the study. But then they brought one of us in, just an average person. And they hooked him up just like the drug addict or the baseline study. But instead of saying you're going to get a hit of drugs, they uttered the words, you are about to experience a financial gain. What's amazing about it is if you overlaid the two functional MRIs of the drug addict's brain and the individual's brain simultaneously while they're being told they're going to get a financial gain or a hit of cocaine, the exact same part of the brain activates to the same degree. You could not tell the brains apart. So we do the same thing when things are going good, which also makes us, when we want people to stay and they want to bail, there may be times where we want people to come out, scale back, lock in the gains, and they're saying, no, keep going. This thing's going to the moon. So I think those are fun things to talk about and kind of important to understand. And it's all, I'll finish with this statement as it relates to that example. It's all part of a Nobel Prize winning study that they call it prospect theory. And what prospect theory identified is that human beings require about twice the gain to offset the pain of a loss. So in other words, if I'm an investor, if I just lost $1, I need a $2 gain to offset that pain. I don't need to get whole. I got to get whole plus. So interesting things. Again, the brain it's a powerful thing. It's wonderful. If we understand how it works, what factors are thrown in when we're being faced with choices, it's important to understand what are the biases that get applied in our own minds because of our past experiences, our personal past experiences, and how can we better manage those so that we don't make the dumb decisions all the time.
And that takes us back to your initial story and experience 17 years ago. It's because of the air traffic controllers that kept their cool. You listen to the conversations, and it sounds like they're having a discussion every day. And the pilot who made the decisions he did and the process that he had to go through, that all of those passengers trusted. You need to have those advisors in place. So when things get a little crazy and you get a little crazy, you can depend on someone else to help make calm, rational decisions with you.
As crazy as it is, the fact that he was unemotional and simply said, brace for impact. That was it. There was no emotion. There was no screaming, holy mackerel, we're going to die. None of that was going on. Or, oh, I can save this thing. It was just brace for impact, guys.
Yeah, all of that while knowing that the rate of successful water landings was extremely low.
It's the first time in history nobody died in in an unintended water landing.
Unbelievable.
Not necessarily for this podcast, but I've had the privilege of spending time with both Jeff, the first officer, Jeff Skiles, and Sully through the years. And they walked me through. So it was kind of fun. I had breakfast with them one morning, a couple of weeks after the plane crash, and had the chance to pick their brain, much like the media and the NTSB was picking my brain. And listening to how methodical they were in the process. I mean, they were trained. Did they expect it to happen? No. Do you expect the market to go down? Kinda, but you're trained to monitor, to guide, to react appropriately to the gyrations in the market. The average investor isn't, because we're out raising kids, chasing down, vendors at our businesses, dealing with HR issues, all those things, I love behavioral finance. Love it. Mostly because I learned something new about myself from it every time I'm reading. One of my favorite vindications in this world was, I think it was about 2012 or 2013. One of the biggest advocates, and when I say advocate, I'm talking they built an empire. He built an empire while he was alive, on the premise, the tagline, you don't need a financial advisor. You can do this on your own. Just buy low-cost index-type investments. You'll do as good as an advisor will. So about 2012, 2013, they're in their heyday. It was right after the financial crisis. The group Vanguard commissioned a study. And the purpose of the study was to validate that all the people that were using financial professionals in the world were not that smart. They should be doing it on their own. The funny part was the study came back. An independent third party did the study. The study came back, and they found that an investor who works with a financial advisor like you two, on average, gets more than 300 basis points a year in better performance over time than an investor who tries to do it on their own. Think about that. 3 percentage points of net performance improvement by using investment professionals in the process. Over 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, 3% a year, that's major league money. That's major league wealth.
That's a lot of money.
So what happened? This organization and the others like it that tried to provide do-it-yourself now have arms for professional advice. I find that very, very vindicating.
We'll be happy to document all of it for anybody that wants to see the slides that we've referenced and whatnot. So we'll have that for those that reach out to us at potentiawealth.com. Joe, this was an amazing, absolutely amazing conversation. Any last key takeaways from all of the research that you want to highlight that we didn't address during this take? And we reserve the right to call you back for a second episode. I think that we still have plenty of conversation left to have.
Well, as you found, I could talk about this behavioral finance, the plane crash, and my kids ad nauseum, as I have on your show today. So here's what I'll tell you. 150 people were successful because they had their faith and trust in an exceptionally well-trained pilot that knew how to interpret the data quickly and accurately, and ultimately adjusted his course of action to save us. That's a perfect analogy, at least from my perspective, for what you two and your team do on a daily basis to help your clients get to a successful financial landing, hopefully in retirement. So I'm a big fan of Potentia. I'm a bigger fan of you guys for what you do. Your name is the firm, but I know what you do. And in spite of the fact that Todd gives me a hard time all the time, I still like him. He's pretty decent guy. Sarah's the keeper.
Yes, for sure.
Well, thank you, Joe, and thank you, Kevin. It's as I said, it's just been a phenomenal conversation. I know it's been very helpful. Everybody listening, thank you as well. Just remember, wealthness isn't about predicting turbulence. It's about having a plan and a process and a steady hand when it arrives. If you're not comfortable with your current plan or you don't believe you even have one, please reach out to us at Potentia Wealth and we'll be happy to start the conversation or continue the conversation for you. Remember, be proactive, be prepared, and most of all, look out for each other. And please like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Power of Wealthness Podcast. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit our website at potentiawealth.com or give us a call at 408-288-7886. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Potentia Wealth or Potentia RIA. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Investment advice offered through Potentia RIA LLC, a registered investment advisor.